page turners, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing some of the books that I borrowed from the library. So if you remember, a couple of weeks ago I borrowed a whole heap of books from the library and a lot of them were non-fiction. So what I thought I would do with the non-fiction books was I would read them like sort of by myself and then make a few notes on what I thought of them. And if I liked them, if I would read them again, if I would own them, different things like that. So, I've got my notebook again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I've got 6 reviews here to go through with you guys. So, what I'm going to do is I will put a picture of the books sort of in this area here next to me, and then we can start chatting about them. So the first one that I read was the Mythical Creatures Bible. So this was one of the ones that I picked up from the library haul video that I gave a thumbs up to because I thought, yeah, this seems really interesting, I'll check it out. And it was a really interesting book. So I really liked the introduction. It had a lot of interesting points. It was a little bit longer than I thought an introduction should be. I generally like non-fiction books to have shorter introductions, but that's just my personal opinion. I really liked all the information from around the world. There was lots of different places that were mentioned all around Europe, Asia, the Pacific, Africa, everywhere around the world. But I especially found the Australian and New Zealand mythological creatures to be the most interesting, especially as I didn't actually know that Australian dragon myths and Kiwi dragon myths existed. So that was really interesting to read about. I also quite liked that it included a lot of biblical creatures from the Bible. I'm not particularly religious myself, but I thought it was really interesting to include things like the Serpent of Eden, which, you know, everyone knows about the Serpent of Eden, especially if you guys are into the TV show Lucifer. So check him out, he's wonderful. So with the book itself, each creature was broken off into sections, and then they had subsections. So they'd have the character, or the creature rather, in generalized terms, and then they'd have specific creatures that fit into that description. So for example, there was a shapeshifters section, so it would have the title shapeshifters and then information about generalized shapeshifters and what they do and how they came to be about. Then they have more specific kinds of shapeshifters, so like your werewolves, or like things like the Wendigo and Aswang. So that was really interesting, particularly because the Aswang has been featured in another TV series called Grimm. So that's another really good TV show that you guys should check out. So yeah, Lucifer, Grimm, check them out. They're great TV shows. Both of them my husband got me into. So that's pretty much my points for the Mythical Creatures Bible. Would I read it again and own it? Yes, I would. It was a great little book, and it was a similar size to another book that I've got actually on this shelf here, the Big Book of Knowledge, which I will just grab for you guys. Just give me a second. So it's this size. So nice little size, really fun. So yeah, that's that one. The next one that I read was Fairies, Elves, and Goblins, the Old Stories. So, again, the book started with a really interesting introduction, but the introduction was a lot smaller than what the Mythical Creatures Bible introduction was, so I quite liked that. It was short introduction, short, sweet, to the point, exactly what the book's going to be about. So fantastic, in my opinion. Um, I also really liked that each story had a location to where it originated. So they are purely like fictional sort of fairy tale type things. Um, they all originated in the UK, but it would tell you where in the UK it was from. So whether it was from a place in England, a place in Scotland, a place in Wales, so on and so on and so forth. So that was really good for me as well if I didn't really know that story, because I've got, can't even think off the top of my head, I've got umpteen mythology books, and yes, some of them do say where these myths and legends are from, but some of them don't. So it's like, oh, okay, I'd really like to know when this story is from, sort of thing. So there's that. I also liked that I'd never heard of any of the stories. So all the stories that were included in this book were not in any mythology book that I have in my collection or that I'd borrowed before from the library. So it was really interesting to read little fairy tales that I sort of hadn't heard of before. So that was really, really interesting. So I really liked that. And there was also some really, really cool and sweet illustrations about the different fairies, elves, goblins, whatever the main feature was of that story. So it was really good. And then in the back of the book, so like once all the fairy tales were finished, there was a little section at the back about how the stories originated. So, for example, if a story originated in England, for example, it would be, for example, there was one that I remember reading that was from Cornwall. So it's like, this was where it originated in Cornwall, this was why it originated. So that was really interesting as well for me to have that bit of extra information about where these stories came from. So, really, really good book. Would I read it again and own it? Yes, I would. So, that's another one that I've added to my list. Next one. I borrowed a book on Antony and Cleopatra. This one I wasn't as keen on. It was very long, took a long time to get to the point. Like, honestly, I actually had to skim through most of the book to find what I wanted to read about, which I don't like to do that. Like, I like to read a book pretty much cover to cover. So it took a long time, and the information was quite long and boring for me to read. With a lot of non-fiction books, I actually prefer to read more kid-friendly books like junior non-fiction, because I find that the information is clearer, more concise, easier to understand, and they also have like really interesting and cool pictures. A lot of the junior non-fiction books that I really like are DK eyewitness books. So I've got this one here about crystals and gems, but they're really, really tiny, tiny, thin books like that. But the information in them, like this, for example, about beryl, it's really, really simple and concise and easy to read, and the pictures are fantastic. So, if you're ever looking for a non fiction book that is really simple and easy to understand, go for a DK Eyewitness, 100%. They are so fantastic. I've got heaps of them, so I will be featuring a lot of those on my channel. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on the Antony and Cleopatra book. Would I read it again and own it? Definitely not. It was too long. It was very, very thick. The print was quite small as well, which sometimes I don't really like books with really tiny writing. So yeah, that's pretty much my view on the Antony and Cleopatra book. The next one that I read was the Great White Shark one, Myth and Reality. So again, non-fiction book. Surprisingly, there was a lot more information in it that I thought it was going to have. Like, I thought it was going to be majority of it being pictures and then some really simple information, but you'd have a picture on the page. So say like this is the page, this would be your picture, and then there'd be tiny great huge chunk of information in tiny writing at the bottom of the page, and I'm just sort of reading it and I'm like, nah, I can't do this. But I did really like the pictures in the book. There were some really cool pictures of the great white sharks. So they photograph really nicely. Like, they are just brilliant in photographs. So again, would I read it again and own it? No, that will not be going on my list. Alright, 2 to go. Starting with Angela Carter's book of Fairytales. So I'm a big kid at heart, and I do like a lot of fairy tales. The first thing that I noticed when I opened this book was a dog-eared page. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this book isn't even yours and you're going to deface it? Like, that's my opinion. And it had a built-in ribbon bookmark, which I like. I like books that have that sort of fancy schmancy. But that's about it. The introduction was way too long. Like, to me, an introduction should be 1 to 2 pages, 3 max. This had like a maybe 15-page introduction. It's like, do you really need it to be that long? And the stories in it, they didn't grab my attention like what the Fairies, Elves and Goblins book did. Like, those stories, I was like right in there, like, oh, these stories are really good. These stories, I'm reading them and I'm just sort of like, eh. So again, I wouldn't read it again and I wouldn't own it in my collection. So again, purely my opinion. Last one, Check and Mate. So I borrowed that one because I've heard a lot of good things about like those style of romance books. But reading it, I wasn't really that enthralled with it. It started with a prologue. The prologue I found was way too long, and I feel like it was a bit unnecessary to the book itself. Like, why would you need a prologue like that? I read 5 chapters of it and I was still really bored. So normally when I read a novel, it takes me anywhere up to 5 chapters to decide if I'm really enjoying the book. So if you saw in my Beautiful Death video where I read the first chapter of that, I was like, oh, I really like this book. I really want to keep reading it. The story's great. So yeah, the story's gotta grab me, and it's gotta have a certain je ne sais quoi, to put it in those sorts of terms. So yeah, I knew once I'd finished the 5th chapter, I'm like, nah, it's going in the DNF list. So yeah, wouldn't read it again, wouldn't own it. Yeah, didn't even want to finish it. I was like, nah, can't do it. And I had the same thing with the Antony and Cleopatra book that's going on the DNF list as well. So, it happens. We get these books and we think, oh, this is going to be really good. It's going to have great information or a great story. And then we start reading it and we're just like, eh. So, you know, but that's what these review videos are all about. They're about giving you guys my opinions, and you guys might have your own opinions about these books, or like, honestly, I welcome recommendations. Like, if you guys have any recommendations, post them on my Instagram, post them in the comments. Like, tell me. Like, honestly, I'm pretty universal with what I read. Like, I read a huge variety of books. I go from horror to fantasy to romance to thriller to like children's fiction, children's non-fiction, animals, science, everything. Um, but I will say, with the non-fiction, depending on what it is, I would prefer a child-friendly non-fiction book. But not something so simple that it's made for like preschoolers. Like, that's way too simple and again kind of boring. So but yeah, I wanted to say thank you again to you guys for joining me. Really hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and follow my Instagram for updates on when I upload videos. And I will see you guys really soon in the next video.